Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. Before starting my video, if you didn't subscribe my channel yet, please do. And do not forget to turn on notifications because I'm here every day for you. Alright, in this video, I'm going to add a filter in our application and I'm going to show you how can we eliminate errors using filters. Let's run the application first and see the possible error messages before adding our filter. All right, this is our project. Right click on empty space, inspect. Okay, now I'm going to manipulate our client side data and I'm going to send invalid data to get error messages. Then we're going to add a filter to eliminate those error messages. Okay, let's continue. Body. Where is my container? This is my main. All right, this is my table. Let me have a look. All right, this is delete button for number for ID electronics category name. As you can see, our link is category slash delete category slash 4. It means we are sending number 4 as an ID. What if I try to send something different, or if I send something irrelevant or invalid data? Right click on it. Let's edit attribute. Okay. I'm gonna delete this parameter. I'm gonna send null object. So what's gonna happen? Let's see the result. Once I send this, when I run this endpoint, as you can see, we're going to get error messages. Our application has been crashed. We need to prevent this, right? Let's continue. Let's get back. All right. Let's work with the update category. What if I send something irrelevant data, edit attribute. Let's send text instead of an ID. Let's run the application. Here we go. We have an error messages again. We received these error messages in our mapping class, but if we didn't have a mapping class, we should have get this error message in our repository. Okay, let's continue. Another thing, what if I send, I'm trying with you as well. I don't remember which one is needed to be fixed. So let's send empty for update category. Yep, we have another error messages again. Let's continue. Okay, let's refresh our page and let's go our update page and let's manipulate our form. Let's go in our container main. This is our form and this is our input hidden and this is our input electronics. Perfect. Let's say instead of number 4, what if I send, oops, what if I send 666? What's gonna happen now? Let's try to change it. Let's click update. As you can see, we received an error messages again. Alright, let's continue. Let's try to change and manipulate our form again. Let's say, what if I sent, let me have a look quickly here, edit attribute. What if I sent a string instead of number 4? What's gonna happen? Let's update it. What's happening? Is it working? Is it updated? Let's click update. must be error messages here. Let me have a look quickly. Alright, let's try to change the number again. Let's update it. Yeah, we're receiving error messages. Probably once I try to send a text, it's becoming a null object and it returns nothing. Okay, we're going to see step by step all of them, but you have seen most of error messages while we're sending our data to our application. Okay, let's close the application now, and I'm going to create a filter, close everything, and I will try to eliminate those errors. Let's add a new folder which is called filters. Add a new class, parameter, check, filter. Okay, I need to inherit from I action filter. Let's implement our interface. We receive two different methods here, on action executed and on action executing. We are going to use on action executing before I want my filter run just before action triggered. So let's delete this exception section, and this is not going to work. Let's continue with execution section. Alright, first of all, we need to get the value comes from our user to our endpoint parameter. I'm gonna call this value. We have context here. This is the heart of our application. We're going to get action arguments, values, and the first all default. Perfect. So we received the value. By the way, we select the first or default because our parameter receives just one item. So that's why I'm choosing first or default. Okay. Now, first of all, if the value, if it's null, we're going to throw an exception. Let's say object, not object, parameter cannot be null. All right. But before continue, let's open a random controller, for example, category. I'm going to use this filter for my delete, update, and update with integer. This three action method needs to be filtered because the rest of them we can't send error messages because they are receiving nothing. So we just going to filter this three. As you can see, they are receiving just one item in the parameter. So we're going to catch those parameters using action argument values, first or default. If they are null, by the way, not null, it's not null, it's going to be null. If the value is null, it means we are sending nothing as a parameter. So we're going to throw an exception, and in our future lesson we're going to catch those exceptions and we're going to return a meaningful message to our users. All right, if the value is null, we're going to throw an exception, parameter cannot be null. If it's not null, let's continue. Let's have a look. If it's not null, it can be an integer or it can be a class, right? Let's get back. Let's see if it's integer or not. I'm going to use var integer check, integer try parse value to string. out integer value. All right. So we're going to check the value if it's integer or not. If it's integer, we're going to receive a true result, and it is going to assign to int value. All right. Let's say if integer check it's true, we're going to do our logic. Do logic here. Okay. If it's not an integer, now we're going to make a entity check in this section. Entity check. All right. Let's continue with the integer check first, then we will continue with the other logic. All right. If it's an integer, first of all, we need to check, do we have any data match with this ID? Is that correct? Yep. To do that, we're going to implement our repository. Sorry, it's going to be private. Private read-only I generic repository. This is a generic repository, and I'm going to make my filter as a generic, so I will able to use my filter for all controllers and all action methods. So let's edit t entity, and let's add this t entity here, and this t entity must be a class. All right, let's say repository. Let's add our constructor. Here we go. Now we're going to check, is there any entity related to this ID? Var entity repository get item by ID integer value. If entity is null, it means there is no such a object related to this entity ID. Okay, we're going to throw new exception. Item not found. Perfect. If we able to find the entity, now we're going to end this filter, so we're going to use return. After return is initialized, our action method will work because we check the parameter, we check the ID. If it's working, we find the entity, all is perfect and working smoothly. Let's get back our action method normally. All right, let's continue. If this value is not an integer, so we're going to check if it's an entity or not. All right. First of all, let's try to find out, is it entity or not? Entity check. Let's get back our controller. As you can see, this is an update, right? This is an update method. So we are using a view model here. So, but the entity is category, but the v model is category update v model. So I'm going to add one more parameter to my filter, t update v model. Perfect. Now I'm going to try to cast my value object to entity check. Okay. If we're able to cast it, it's perfect. It's working. But if it's not castable, if it's null, as you can see, we have a question mark here. It is telling us it can be a null object. So in this case, we're going to return an exception if entity check is null, throw exception, let's say invalid object. For example, while we adding our parameters for this update method, instead of category update vModel, if I add, for example, category quit vModel or product list vModel, something irrelevant to this object, we're going to get a message which is telling us invalid object. Okay, all right. So if we pass this logic, so if our entity is what we're looking for, now we're going to get the ID and check the item. To do that, we're going to use the reflection now. Var type entity check get type. I'm going to get the ID property and I'm going to value of ID because this is a generic filter and we don't know which view model we are using right now. Var ID type dot get properties first or default name equal ID, and it is telling us basically if you use every model which is named different with ID as an ID, for example IC or product ID or category ID instead of just ID, you're going to get error messages. First of all, let's get the value. ID value ID dot get value. The object is entity check. Perfect. And if ID value is null, why it's adding automatically double parentheses for nothing? Okay, if the ID value is null, let's throw new exception. By the way, I didn't add another null check after ID because if it's null, the value is going to be null automatically. So for these two operation, I'm going to use just one null check, and I'm gonna say the exception message is going to be property name or value is invalid. All right, perfect. If we pass this logic, if we get the ID and if we get the value of ID, now we are able to check in our database if it exists or not. Var entity check repository get item by ID integer value. No, it's ID value. Why we're receiving? By the way, this is an object. Okay, let's try to check this ID value is integer or not first. Let's copy this ID check. ID value integer check. Okay, this is going to be ID value. What's happening? Yep, id value to string, out is integer value. I'm gonna say id value integer, id value integer. Okay, if we pass this logic, our data assign as id value integer. All right, if we get false, we're going to get an error message here. Integer, why I couldn't see id value integer check is if it's false, throw an exception, invalid id. Perfect. If it's an integer, now we are able to make a request to our database. All right. Var id value entity check. Let's go our repository. Let's get item by id, and I'm going to give integer value. No, this is id value integer, sorry. id value integer. We're going to use this variable. If the object is null, throw new exception, and we're going to say item not found. Perfect. If we receive the item, it means everything is perfect. All we need to do is just return. Alright guys, hopefully it is going to work smoothly. Let's add these filter to our extension services. Add scope is a generic, so I'm using type of, what was the name of, parameter check filter, and there is two different type we are expecting. Here we go. It is registered to our service container. All we need to do is use it. Let's get back our category controller right now. Now I'm going to add for update category integer ID. Let's say service filter type of parameter check filter, and it requires an entity and update vmodel. Entity is category, the vmodel is category update vmodel. Perfect. I'm gonna copy this for all of them. By the way, you can divide your filter. For example, parameter ID check filter, parameter entity check filter, and you can use just ID filter just for ID one, and you can use entity filter just for the entity one. It's up to you. I just create just one method, and I'm using for all of them. All right, let's put a breakpoint on our filter, and let's run the application and see the results step by step. Hopefully it is going to work, and we will eliminate our error messages. Actually, we're going to get error messages, but those error messages will be exactly what we want. And next lessons, we're going to catch those exceptions. We're going to return meaningful messages. Okay, first of all, let's right click and inspect. Try to manipulate our data. Container, main, this is the table, this is the body. Alright, let's manipulate these attribute. Instead of 4, I'm gonna send nothing. Alright, let's send it. Let's click the delete category. F10, F10, the value is null. So it means we're going to get an exception parameter cannot be null, as you can see. Alright, here you go. This is the exception, exactly what we sent as an error. Perfect. Let's close here. Now I'm going to send another data. This is the ID, for example. Alright, let's send it. The value is, as you can see, we've received 55545. The value is not null, so we're going to continue. Now we're going to do an integer check. If it's integer, true, it is integer, and integer value assigned to our value. Now we're going to an entity check. As you can see, the entity is null because we don't have any category which is related to this value. As you can see, we're going to get item not found. Perfect. We received the error messages smoothly. Let's continue. I can use up for update as well, but I'm not gonna try it. You can try on your own. Let's refresh the page. Okay, let's continue with the electronic page. Now I'm going to manipulate the form, and in the meantime, we're going to receive correct information. Let's send it. The value is 4. Value is not null. Perfect. Integer check. True. We're going to get the entity. As you can see, we received the entity electronics, and we are returning now. Perfect. Let's continue. As you can see, we received our data. This is how the filter is working exactly. Alright, now let's manipulate the form. Let's get into container main, and this is our form. Let's try to manipulate as much as we can. Okay, this is the input hidden. We are sending the ID. Let's manipulate it first. Edit attribute. I'm gonna send number 54. Let's change. Let's try to change the object. Alright, let's have a look at the value. As you can see, the value ID is 54 and the name is something we just type in our form. Value is not null, we pass this logic. Integer check, this is false. Let's continue. Now we're going to make an entity check. Alright, this is an entity and it's, as you can see, 54 and electronics blah blah. We pass this section because we have an entity. Okay, now we're going to get types of entities. The ID is ID. The value is 54. ID value is not full, null. Let's continue. And ID value integer check is true. As you can see, we received the correct value. And now we're going to check, do we have this item in our database? And this is false, this is null. We don't have this item, so we're going to get item not found error message. Perfect. Let's continue. Let's go back. All right. Let's see. Try to. I'm just thinking, can I do something irrelevant? What if I change the input hidden? Let's edit attribute to the text. I'm just trying because the expected data is an integer. So if I send a text, probably ID will be assigned as a 0. Okay, but I'm just would like to see is it going to work or not. All right, let's send the data again and let's see the value. As I told you before, because it is expected an integer, so we received 0. Okay, let's continue. We're going to get not found, probably. Yep, perfect. Now I'm going to stop the application and let's go our view model. Where is my view model? And I'm going to change some data. Where is my... Okay, if I assign as a string instead of integer, I just think about it. You are creating your codes and you are very tired. Instead of integer, you mistype as a string. So what's gonna happen? Your filter, it is going to rescue you. Let's run the application. Send text instead of integer and see what's gonna happen now. Let's go now. Let's continue. All right, let's inspect. Let's go body, container. All right, let's edit attribute to, leave it, it's hidden. Let's type it as a text and send the data. Here we go, we catch it. What's happening? I click something wrong, something. Disable hot reload. Okay, I'm gonna do it again because I click my keyboard wrongly. Is it going to work? Yeah, seems it is working. Okay. As you can see, the ID is a string. Let's continue. Integer check is failed. Entity check is passed because this is an entity. We get the type, we get the ID, we get the value. Value is not null. We going to check is it integer or not. As you can see, this is not an integer. We get invalid ID error messages. Perfect. Let's see invalid ID. Alright, let's stop the application. Get back our string to the integer. Alright. Now let's get back our controller. Instead of category update view model, let's send, for example, category, or should I do category? Let's say product. Update view model. Alright, let's try to run the application one more time and see, let's see if we're going to get any error message or not. Continue again. Let's continue. Alright, inspect. Actually, if I just update, let me see. Okay, let's just send an update, electronics FFF update. Let's send it. We receive the value, the ID and the name. Entity check. As you can see, we couldn't cast our value to expected one, so we get entity check error messages. Let me see. The problem is we try to directly cast the object to vModel, but we forget to that we might get an error message if there is if it's not castable object. So what we're gonna do is let's stop the application. We're going to do a proper check here if it's castable or not. Okay, let's say value is, if the value is t update vModel. I'm going to assign it as an update vModel. Okay, let's leave it like that for now. All I need to the result. It is going to be return bool. If the value is tUpdate vModel, it is going to be true. If it's not, it's going to be false, right? Let's make it false. We're going to get an invalid object. Now we need to change, we need to amend our methods down below. So we're going to get the get type of, no, we're going to get type of the, yeah, we're going to use update vModel. Yeah, because if it's true, the value automatically casted to tUpdate vModel and assigned to the update vModel. As you can see, the return value is tUpdate vModel. Now I'm going to get the type of update vModel. So what is the problem here? Update vModel. So this is not the object. Okay, let's delete it. Then I'm going to use the value itself. It won't be a problem because this is castability update vModel. We're able to use the raw value itself. Now I'm going to get the property of value. We're going to get the ID, and I'm going to give the value itself as a value here. The ID value is null. Perfect. All right. Let's run the application first. First, we need to get the error messages because we are still sending invalid object product update vModel. Then we're going to send a normal object. As you can see, we received our own exception error message invalid object. Perfect. It is working now. Let's run the application. Stop it. Get back to controller. Let's use Control Z, category update vModel, run the application. Finally, I am going to use the normal form to change our electronics to another name. Okay, let's say households. If we get error messages, it's not problem. We're going to use breakpoint and we can see our errors. Let's run the application. All right. The instance of entity type category cannot track because entity instance with the same key value IDs are being tracked when it exists. Consider using. Okay. We have a tracking problem here. That's because we are using two different type of repository action. Okay. Let's run the application. Okay, ID already been tracked. Okay, let's get back. All right. Let's get back our filter. Let me have a look my entity. We get the error messages here, I guess. Let's put breakpoint here. Okay, let's run the application one more time. Here we go. We came here. Once we try to find it, we find it. Now we're going to try to change it. This is where we're getting error messages. All right, let's stop the application. Instead of gets item by ID, I'm going to use another method. All right, let's change get item by ID. Normally it is easiest way to find the item, but the problem is once we try to find this item in our database, the EF core tracking this ID, and if it succeeds, when we get back to our controller, as you can see, we have an update item here. and it is going to be tracked again, but in the same time we can't track two items at the same time. So I'm going to make it a little bit harder. I'm going to try to use a reflection. Hopefully I can do it and we're able to fix this solution not using get item, not using with get item by ID. Alright, so I'm going to get all items because if you remember, we are using get all method with as not tracking. If you get back our generic repository, you will see. So the items we received using get all, they're not being tracking. We are 100% sure about that. Now I'm going to use a reflection to get the old ID of those items. Then I'm going to make a list. I'm going to assign all the IDs in that list. Then I will do a check. All right. Let's let's change the name all entities. Okay, we get the all entities. Now I'm going to create a new list, ID list, which is just for containing ID items, integer items. Let's do a for each loop for all entities. Okay, now let's get type var temporary type for entity get type. Actually, instead of temporary type temporary ID. Let's get the property get properties first or default, which is going to be named as an ID. It's going to be double equal. Yep, perfect. We get the ID var temporary ID value will be temp ID get value. The object is entity. Perfect. Let's add this ID in our list. Temporary ID value. Obviously, we need to cast it to the integer. Perfect. Let's continue. We get our full of ID list. Now we need to change this if check ID list any. The any method returns a boolean value, which is the logic is true or false. The logic is going to be x must be equal the what was our ID? The ID value integer, right? Let's bring it here. Perfect. So if the x comes from ID list equal ID value integer, if we have any item equal this ID value integer, we're going to get true. If it's false, we're going to receive item not found object exception. All right, let's run the application one more time. Hopefully it is going to work now. First, let's try to positive ones. Let's try to change the data in our database without getting any problems. Perfect, it is working. Let's bring it back normal. All right, now let's try to send an integer data which is not in our database. Inspect. Let's try one more time. Where is our container main? Where is my integer hidden? Yep, here we go. This is the value. Edit attribute. Instead of 4, I'm gonna send random data. Let's try to update it. We received item not found, which is exactly what we would like to see at the end of this action. Perfect. It is working smoothly. Alright guys, I'm going to finish this lesson here. Hopefully you understand how we use filters and eliminates our errors. You can add this filter to your product. Where is my controller? Your product controller as well. Alright guys, take care of yourself. See you on next lesson. Bye bye.